Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A lot of sports news has happened since the last live stream. Really interesting stuff. We know the US women's soccer team have lost their legal case against Fair Pay, even though they actually signed up for that agreement. They are appealing that. They are also taking the US Federation to task over their travel expenses, their lodgings, and their healthcare expenses, which I believe in that case they will win. Um, Bill Beaumont's been re-elected as head of World Rugby for another 4 years, so he'll be 72 when his term of his ends, and Augustine Pichot has lost. Really interesting, the north-south divide in voting there. Obviously, Kieran Trippier's little betting issue, his little gambling problem, apparently, according to the FA, he's been charged. So that'll be interesting to see if he's found guilty of betting breaches. Very similar to the Daniel Sturridge situation last year. It's alleged that there was some insider trading in order to place bets on his pending transfer. There's a few other issues at play, like the FA could lose up to £150 million if the FA Cup final is not completed. If the FA Cup is not completed this year, they are estimating they're going to lose anywhere between 100 and 150 million pounds. Do I find Megan Rapinoe annoying? Yes. It's not what she's saying; it's how she says it. I completely agree with looking at women's football funding and finding a solution to make it more profitable. Some of the comments on my video were a bit shitty. Really, it's called "Men Who Are Threatened by Women Who Are Very Good at What They Do." Um, the issue with women's football is the domestic club crowds. As I say in what I did, what I said, the international game is pretty healthy. They pack stadiums. Yes, tickets are cheaper, but then you would expect at club level fans to turn up in droves. Then, if it's more affordable and accessible for people, why aren't people turning up? And exposure. Well, yes, if you've only got one TV station in this country showing women's football, then yeah, that does limit exposure. And yeah, when you look at female sports, ironically, it's less profitable than the women's NBA. It is less profitable than the women's NBA. A few teams do make a small margin of profit, but the women's NBA is propped up by the NBA proper. They pump in tons of cash to keep that league going, and that league is one of the few women's professional leagues not to have folded. It's the same with women's ice hockey in North America. And yes, there has been an aggressive program from various governing bodies around the world for women's sport, pumping money into the professional side of women's sport. But I think it's pumping money down the wrong hole. Possibly, there are other ways to attract fans. When it comes to Olympic sport, people watch. I think when it comes to club team sports, uh, I think yeah, there is clearly an issue because you look at the winter sports like downhill skiing, bobsled, all that. They actually get very very good crowds. Tennis, good crowds. For some reason, the individualistic sports seem to do very very well. Team sports it seems to fall apart a little bit. It does. Um, I think Megan Rapinoe, though, I think she complains too much. I think there is a way to be humble in going about advancing the cause that you were discussing. I think the way she goes about it by just basically stamping her foot and acting like a spoiled brat doesn't help. Um, it's not what she's saying; it's how she's saying it. I think there's a better way to communicate the issues that you have. Yes, they are going to appeal this decision. The ironic thing is they actually signed up for this pay deal agreement years ago. Now, obviously, the situation has changed since then, but they did sign up contractually to what they're now complaining against. So this now highlights other issues. It's also creating a division between the federation and the players because the male players are backing their female counterparts. And this is something that North American sports have a massive problem with is player discontent with the governing bodies and those running the sport and the power brokers behind the sport. When you have a breakdown between the players and their employers, which it happens a lot in North American sports, you have to look at Major League Baseball, you have to look at the NFL, you have to look at the NHL with multiple player strikes and multiple labour outages. North American sports regularly have issues between the players and those that employ them. I think the way the game against Thailand, I think, really summed up the American attitudes to that tournament last year. And while they were deserved winners because they were the best team, let's not doubt that. They beat some pretty good teams in the knockout stages. That blowout against Thailand showed their attitude, and showed up their character. There are some pretty divisive characters, I think, in that group of players. And you know, I'm a big fan of women's rugby. I love watching women's rugby league, women's rugby union. Uh, you know, I think there are ways to broach the discussion of professionalism and funding and grow the sport, and there are ways not to go about it. And the way the women's football team are going about it is probably not the way to do it. They're not winning themselves any friends along the way, even with how they behaved at the World Cup. They do come across as, okay, we are the best, but it's like from the very first game they assumed they were going to win it, and at some point they're not. And they haven't won every World Cup. When they lost to Japan, I think was it 4 or 5 years ago in a previous World Cup, they were quite humbled. The Germans have beaten them a few times. The Scandinavian nations have shown them up occasionally at international level, and that's when it gets interesting. The LA Rams cutting their expensive players like Clay Matthews. I don't really follow the NFL as much as I used to, but I do know the Rams have had problems. They've been relocated from St. Louis. So they were originally in LA. They went to St. Louis. They've been relocated back. So there's no franchise stability in location. They've moved a few times. Yes, they put a lot of money into that stadium because they were playing in I think was it the one of the Los Angeles MLS stadiums. So they were playing in a soccer stadium, if for Americans, a European football stadium. And it is interesting one. I mean, obviously, you've got this shutdown. Shouldn't affect the NFL too much at this time because the NFL season starts in September. So this is the off season for the NFL. We've just had the NFL draft, so there shouldn't be a problem right now. Have they overspent on the stadium? Yep. I think it's going to require a change of ownership, or the NFL coming in. Now, the NHL have come in and basically run teams before. So I could possibly see the NFL coming in to run the team until a suitable owner can be found. I don't think they want the Rams to leave LA. They want to have a two teams in LA. The NHL do it with technically the Anaheim Ducks are technically in the city of Anaheim. That's in the LA Greater Metropolitan area. The NBA does it with the Clippers and the Lakers. The NFL wants a two-team presence in Los Angeles. They've already moved the Chargers from San Diego to LA, so they are going after this two-team Los Angeles policy. The MLS does it quite successfully. All the other leagues do it quite successfully. They don't want to lose market share to the other major leagues, so they're going to keep the Rams there. I have no doubt. There's still people just saying, "Oh, we should have an NFL team in London." Have you seen the carnage outside? It's not going to happen. So that should be pushed, kicked down the road. But I think the NFL want to keep the Rams in LA. That I cannot see the NFL allow it. I mean, the Rams is an interesting case. They've not been a very successful team. Let's not be honest. Let's be honest. Sorry, they've not been successful in their history with championships or anything like that. They've moved a lot. There has been some poor ownership in there. I think you can put this down to overspending on the stadium and poor ownership. But a lot of teams are having to look at, a lot of franchises and teams and organisations are looking at player wages and staff wages during this lockdown, and players deferring or donating salary to non-playing staff. So the fact that they're cutting players at the moment, there are some financial issues there, sure. But I can see a change of ownership at some point, rather than team being moved or going out of business. I can see the NFL stepping in. They have the cash reserves to step in and solve this problem basically. But yeah, players suing to get their money. It's not really making big news over here in the UK. I think because it's the NFL off season. I think, but the Rams is just a tire fire of an organisation for its entire existence. But yeah, it's not a good look. But there'll be those people at the moment who say, well, these are millionaires suing billionaires. And if the billionaires have lost all their money, then the millionaires aren't going to get their money either. But I think the NFL will step in at some point. I don't think they want to have a team in LA go out of business. I think they are very keen to have a two LA team presence in a manner of speaking, because the other major leagues do it and do it very successfully and make a lot of money. And LA will, just turn up and watch sport. They've proven that they can do that with other leagues. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the Rams. But I think the NFL will step in. The Japanese will go mad for anything. It's their culture. The Japanese have taken to rugby like a duck on water. Football, they've gone mad for it. Baseball, obviously, that was both pre and post World War II. They were very keen on baseball. But the Japanese take up anything. It's the same with Koreans as well. They have a very interesting culture where they, absorb. They're a very young culture in the sense that the younger people they're very tech savvy. They buy into anything, and the way it's advertised over there as well, and the way it's an interesting culture. They do buy it. They are a crazy culture. It's the video game culture. You go to nightclubs in Japan, and there's just mostly 80% of the nightclub is an arcade. Um, the It is interesting how they bought into these sports, but they do buy in. They do like their team sports. They buy into them. They may not be the best at them, but they do buy into them. They really enjoy spending their money um, on European or North American type things, and a part of that is to do with World War II and the aftermath of World War II and the Allied occupying powers having a presence in Japan, the US especially, and we brought a lot of the things that we enjoyed with us, and then the Japanese bought in. When their country was rebuilt after World War II, the Japanese bought in. It's amazing that they do have a real interest in. You see the amount of uh, Japanese and Korean tourists that come over to Europe, to London, to Paris, to Milan and Rome and Madrid, Barcelona and Lisbon and Porto. You go to anywhere in Western Europe, there are Japanese and Korean and Chinese tourists everywhere. They buy into Western European, and then you go to North America, it's exactly the same. They buy into that Westernized culture, and then they buy in, and they will go to football matches, rugby matches, uh, baseball. They see it, they go home with them. Kids get interested, but it's the way it's also marketed over there as well. Lots of marketing, lots of in-your-face marketing, and yeah, we are seeing good quality players both in the men's and women's games in football. Rugby, the Japanese men's side have basically united a nation. They've got a big player base, a big fan base there. Motorsport, the Japanese have been crazy about motorsport for a long time. And it's just, we go over there with our sports, they go mad for our sports, then they start playing and investing in our sports, and then we are where we are with Japan. It is an interesting culture, though. It is absolutely bananas, the Japanese intake, and then they hybrid the Western culture, and they come up with the anime and the tech side of things. Like, most of the tech you have in your house has got Japanese imprints all over it, like Toshiba, Panasonic, Sony. So if you've got a PlayStation, you've got a computer, you've got a TV, likelihood is it's Japanese or Korean company that has invested in it. I mean, I've got an HP laptop, but my TV is an LG, and my Xbox is obviously American, but there's a fair bit of Japanese input in the games that I play. I haven't seen the miniseries with Michael Jordan about called The Last Dance. I haven't seen that yet. I have seen some great sports documentary series and one-off documentaries and the multi-part documentary series over the years, but I've never really had the interest in basketball to religiously watch a documentary, even on the great Michael Jordan. I think he is still the best player of all time. Changed my mind, but at the same time, I think with what they're doing with all these HBO and Netflix style documentaries, where the fly on the wall, like the Sunderland one, is an absolute. It's funny because it shows how badly run that club was for a period of time. Out, like we've seen the HBO documentaries in the NHL. They did one on the New York Rangers when John Tortorella was coach there. It's hilarious because he just swears all the time. The fly on the wall sports documentaries, I'm not overly keen on them. And I think the players actually find that a bit intrusive as well, and the coaching staff. And you've got this camera crew following you around, even in the locker room and the behind the scenes training camp all the time. I think they do need a break from the cameras in the face where they can just get on and do their job. Around the 60s. Oh, yeah, no, the Asians in the 60s, yeah. The Olympics went obviously to Tokyo and all that. And again, they're watching all these Olympic events and they absorb it. And then they got crazy good at table tennis. And yeah, the Asians, it's to do with the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games, where these events are part of the program. And they just bought in like that. And then the Chinese, especially the Chinese, use sport as a soft power tool. And this is why the Chinese government still pumps billions and billions of dollars into sports programs, which is why they've become an Olympic superpower in the last 20, 30 years. It's because the amount of money they pump into sports programs and youth facilities, and they've really chucked money at Olympic sports programs and team sports. They have just thrown money at it, and they've got 2 Olympics out of it: 2008 Beijing, and of course next year's Winter Olympics. They've 2 years time, sorry, 2022 Winter Olympics. They've got 2 Olympic games out of their sports funding. So. It is what it is. The Chinese have reaped the rewards of pumping money in by getting 2 Olympic Games back in little over 20 years. So they're doing something right. On an international professional sporting side of things, the Chinese haven't quite done what Japan have done with the Women's World Cup, or Korea and Japan with hosting a World Cup. Japanese rugby team, for example, they haven't quite done as well as some of the other Asian nations when it comes to international team, professional team sports. But I think eventually they with the funding they have and the population base, they will eventually get there. Something like I've seen snippets of it, and it's just as crazy as Tiger King. I don't think that helps Sunderland at all, having a camera crew following them around while they're in complete and utter meltdown for 2 years. I think I feel sorry for the players who, go. It just shows how badly mismanaged that team was for so long, and well, you can go from there. I don't think it helped the situation with the Black Cats, because that's their nickname, when the team is just in meltdown and you've got a camera crew following around for like 2 years. It I think what it shows positively is the fan base in Sunderland. It shows the fan base of the North East in a positive light. They're very, very passionate about their team. When you are clearly unfit to own a club, and you have bad management across the board, it shows what can go horribly wrong very, very quickly with a sports team. And I find it painful viewing. I don't think it's funny at all. I think it really is a shambles. There's no feel good story out of that apart from the fans. Really, you could do one about Newcastle United, and it'd probably be exactly the same. The fan base comes out in a positive light. The ownership and the management behind the scenes comes out as a shambles. And that's something else that needs to be talked about, is the Newcastle takeover. We're 2 weeks in since the paperwork has been handed to the FA and the Premier League. Obviously, there's external pressure on the deal from human rights organisations and the Qataris, but you know, um, we'll see what happens. They didn't stop the Sheffield United takeover where there's Saudi money, so I can't see them stopping the Newcastle one because that makes them hypocritical. Um, Kim Jong Un, oh yes, North Korea, oh beautiful. Um, yeah, there's lots of rumours going on about the dear leader. Um, that's for the other channel. There are lots of rumours going around that he died on an operating table, and uh, yeah, all sorts going on. Cannot be verified because it's North Korea, because we don't know what's going on with North Korea. But no, the Newcastle United takeover, as I was saying, um, not really. No one's really sure how that's going to play out. It's most likely going to go through. I mean, at the end of the day, the geopolitics behind it, I think, is distracting because it just shows how hypocritical the footballing governing bodies and authorities are when they've given a World Cup to Qatar, knowing there's human rights abuses. Multiple football teams, club teams, are owned by various Arab nations. beIN Sports, very dodgy media company with some dodgy deals. There's a whole load of geopolitical things going on. If they block this takeover, it shows how hypocritical and unfit for purpose the governing bodies of football really are. But we already knew that with the Qatar World Cup award and FIFA not going, that's a bad idea because of money. The Saudis have infinite deep pockets of oil and gas wealth. And click of the fingers, they can just turn off Western Europe's gas and oil supply, and then you're relying on the Russians, which is not a good idea. So I can't see the Premier League and the FA blocking it. And Amnesty International can whinge all they like. They haven't really put up enough of a fight to say to footballing nations boycott the World Cup in Qatar. They're picking and choosing their geopolitical battles, and yeah, if Pochettino goes to Newcastle, it'd be interesting to see how he does. I think the way Totti he burnt out at Tottenham um, is a problem. I do feel slightly sorry for Steve Bruce in the sense that they've gone into this period of suspension of play with 9 games left, 7 games left, whatever it is. As manager, when football resumes, he could be out of a job. I think Steve Bruce should be allowed to complete the season, if the season can be completed in the Newcastle job if they do bring Pochettino in. But Pochettino hasn't actually won any silverware, so big money for a manager who's come up short time and time again. That's my personal opinion. He didn't win anything with Tottenham. He didn't win anything with Southampton. I think he got to a League Cup final with Southampton, but didn't get any silverware out of any of these. I know he's an arse, but I do feel slightly sorry for him as he's got into this suspension of play manager, and through no fault of his own, he'll be out of a job, and then they have to pay him compensation payments for terminating his contract early. Tottenham are still paying Pochettino money after sacking him. I know Steve Bruce is an arse. I do feel slightly sorry for him because I don't think even he intended to go into this lockdown and then be out of a job at the other end. I think the whole thing, is a bit of a mess, really. The club should have been sold 3 years ago. Mike Ashley was asking too much money. Now that his other businesses are financially in need of cash injection, he's selling. I think, yeah, Steve Bruce, yeah, he's had his lengthy managerial career. I think it's over 20 years now. But you have to feel sorry for him in the sense that football's been shut down for health reasons. There's a handful of games left. Newcastle are not getting relegated. He's done a decent job this season with the squad that he's got. I mean, they're still in the FA Cup. They could ironically win that trophy. That'd be really interesting. Again, he's been given limited means in the transfer market to build a team because like Ashley, and then he could get them to the FA Cup final. He could get them there whenever football resumes, and then he's out of the job. I do find that slightly unfair. He could be out of the job before football resumes. That's where I find it harsh on Steve Bruce. I don't think he was the right man for the job anyway, looking back on it all. But this is Mike Ashley, and he was the only guy to say yes to Mike Ashley. You know, he's actually Geordie's from County Durham, but he's a Newcastle fan. The thing is, it's a Mike Ashley appointment because Steve Bruce was the only manager willing to say yes to Mike Ashley. That's where you get the dislike of Steve Bruce. He is a Mike Ashley appointment in the sense that he was the only guy to say yes. Even Big Sam didn't want to go back. And when you've got some of the managers that Mike Ashley's had have not been the best, and they have been very, very controversial. But when you've got Kevin Keegan, Alan Pardew, and Big Sam all saying, and Big Sam is a vile person, when you've got them all saying the guy is a clown, it is cuckoo land behind the scenes, it's a Mickey Mouse show, and there are reasons why they all refuse to go back there. And Alan Pardew was the one who had the most success under Mike Ashley with league finishing position and getting them into European football. When they're all saying this guy is a clown, it's a mess behind the scenes. The youth development's a mess. The training facilities are decaying. Lack of investment, lack of care, in it for the money, asset stripping. They basically say the same thing. He's a knob. There's a reason why Big Sam turned him down. There's a reason why Pardew turned him down. There's a reason why Keegan turned him down again. They do not want to work with this man. And Steve Bruce was not the first choice on the phone. I think he was fourth or fifth choice, as it's been reported by some publications of manager. He was not the first choice. Now, what's going to need to happen at Newcastle is they're going to have to invest in the infrastructure of the club. So it's all well and good saying, yeah, we'll have Poch on this big money contract. But then obviously the dreaded FFP. Will they be in breach of financial fair play? They're going to have to spend a lot of money in turning that club around from a club that has a very passionate fan base to a club that can challenge again for the first time in 20 years for silverware, because they haven't been close for a long time. And this is the first time they're in the fifth round under Mike Ashley's ownership. I say let Steve Bruce finish out the season. If they are going to do this, and finish out the season and finish out the FA Cup and see how far he can take them, because that's a chance of silverware for the first time in 60 odd years for the club. Let him get through that and then make a decision to appoint Pochettino, because otherwise you're going to sack Steve Bruce and have to pay him compensation payments straight out the gate, which is going to cost the owners more money. And I think they are willing to spend, but not willing to spend on unnecessary expenses. And the fact that they're willing to, rumoured to be paying Pochettino nearly £20 million a year, when football as it is having to cut costs and furlough staff, they have to be careful about the image problem that they could have as, well, we've replaced bad with worse. They have to be careful how they go about this. But what they're going to have to do first up is invest in the infrastructure, in the youth facilities, in the training facilities, in the club infrastructure before anything can turn around. And yeah, it's all going to say, yeah, we'll splash the cash, we'll give you a £300 million transfer kitty, we can buy all the best players. They're going to have to invest in the club first, stabilise it, give it a solid foundation before any success can happen. It took Man City a long time to win their first trophy. They wasted tons of cash by bad transfers, throwing too much money at players, poor managerial decisions, poor recruitment, and then they finally managed to get over the line many years down the road. And a lot of Man City fans are glory hunters who don't remember the bad times at Main Road when they were down in the third division. But that's another thing. This is why I don't like modern football, because glory supporters who disappear at the first time of trouble. This is why I like Newcastle United as a club, because the fans are so loyal. It hasn't, because De Bruyne is now threatening to leave if they don't get their Champions League ban overturned. So it does show that even their most key players are mercenary. And if I don't get my Champions League football, I'm leaving. They've never won the Champions League since the new ownership has taken over, and they don't look likely in winning the Champions League, even with all the talent they have. Not even close. If the Champions League is renewed and continued in August, obviously there'll be a bit of fixture arrangement because of the FA Cup, because Man City is still in the FA Cup. I cannot see Man City winning Champions League. Not with the dislike from their fan base towards UEFA, which is laughable, because before the takeover and in the early days of the takeover, the fans loved being in the Europa League because it got them European football regularly every season. They struggled for years to get out the group stage, and they've been twice to the semi-final, and no further. And they have to pump crowd noise into the Etihad. They have not packed. When was the last time Man City had a sellout for any game? Just put that question out there. When was the last time Man City had a sellout for any game? They do not sell out their stadium regularly, which begs the question: they're a successful team. Why are they not selling out that stadium? Why are they not winning the battle of fandom in Manchester? Why are they not? It does beg the question. And yes, they've won some silverware since then, but they've got their battle with UEFA, and now some of their key players are going, if I don't get Champions League football, I'm leaving. It just shows the mercenary aspect of players these days. You've got to earn the right to win silverware. When they first got bought, they couldn't get through the Europa League. They struggled in the Europa League. They struggled in the Champions League regularly. And it won't be long before they do. I think they peaked as a group. And we don't know what's going to happen if they do end the season early. For whatever reason, they can't continue with the season. It's going to be interesting next season. And if UEFA do uphold the ban, because the earliest their case will be heard will be July, because the Court of Arbitration of Sport is overloaded with cases at the moment, so they're doing it as quick as they can. Then if the ban is upheld, you could see some big name players leave. And then where do you go from there? But it does show the mercenary aspect of the modern player. Also, I do question, with all this investment in their youth facilities, why are there not more youth products in the squad? Why are they still buying inexpensive talent from other clubs? Where is this youth development that we were promised when the Sheikhs took over? Yeah, they've got all this complex of stadiums and pitches and a great women's team and all this. Where's the youth come through? Mika Richards is come and gone. Foden doesn't get enough games. They're continually buying talent in from other clubs, which is then suppressing the youth talent that they're investing in. Well, why is Foden not getting a more regular football? Why is he being drip-fed football? That's a problem. He's a very talented player. I think he should get a lot more game time. Where's this talent coming through that they were saying, oh yeah, we've invested all this money? Where is it? They keep buying players in rather than promoting the youth, building a core of these young players who identify with the city of Manchester and the club. And then, Foden, Mika Richards was their best youth product until Foden. To come through the club, through the system, youth to senior level, Mika Richards. And Foden. Sancho's gone. He's doing wonderful things in Germany, earning his right to play for England. Where's the rest of this youth production line that we've been, Man City said they've invested so much money in? Liverpool's youth production line is clearly much better. They've spent a lot less money on their youth facilities. They haven't, and in Liverpool, a lot of their youth are getting into that senior squad. Short-term success for Man City, I think Liverpool have built themselves for long-term period of domination. I'm just putting that question out there. It is striking. You look at the facilities around the Etihad Stadium, or the City of Manchester Stadium as it was once known. You look at the facilities they've now built. Where is this talent pool that they put all this money into? Because before they built all this, Mika Richards came through. A lot of other players came through Man City at various points. Where is the payoff? I think Foden, if he wants to become a first team regular and nail down a spot, is Man City the club for him under Guardiola? Bearing in mind, Guardiola has said also that if he can't get Champions League success within his contract, he will leave early. He will also leave. So you've got De Bruyne threatening to go, I'm throwing my toys out the pram, there's no Champions League football. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Foden may have to look at. Uh, I think yeah, Foden might have to look elsewhere. British players don't help themselves by playing. There are a fair few British players playing in Europe. Not as many as there were in the 80s and 90s, I'll hasten to add. There were a lot of English and Scottish players plying their trade in France and Italy and Germany in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid. And into the early 2000s, I think. Uh, but I think the Premier League wages are massively overinflated. That encourages average players. Average players can get a pretty big salary by doing not a lot apart from sitting on the bench. Um, and you could argue that it would be nice to see, more British players trying their hand at different styles across Europe. It might benefit the national team. Sancho proving that that is the case. You can, at a young age, go, I'm not happy being a bench warmer, not being allowed to get first team exposure. I'm going to a club that does value youth with experience as well, but does promote youth and give youth a chance to shine in the first team, give them exposure, give them opportunity. And he went to Dortmund, and yeah, I don't think he wants to come back to English football, and I don't blame him. Um, uh, do they value other leagues less? I think you have to take it by case basis. You have to look at the number and the type of player who's gone over to play in Europe. Most of them are not strikers; they're midfielders and defenders who've gone over to Europe to play. Um, I do think Man City's youth academy is more for show than actual purpose. I think it was part of the reason why the Sheikhs got their club, was they say they were going to invest in the local community. But I can't see as much. I mean, where's this youth talent coming through? Why is it not coming through in the numbers? That's another one. Um, I do see more homegrown talent in a variety of sports, not just football. I think there is going to be more homegrown talent coming through. We know British ice hockey is looking at changing of the overseas player rules in the variety of leagues because of the political changes that we're seeing with Brexit and stuff. I think football will do the same. I think they're going to bring in a rule saying no under 18s can be purchased in transfers. Um, that's going to be interesting. I can see more homegrown talent. I can see the clubs, especially after this coronavirus as well, which I think's come at a very interesting time. Means that the superstar wages could be over, um, and there's going to be the superstar transfers are over as well. I think the way football does its business is going to have to change in the modern, but at least in the short to medium term. I think that's going to see teams in a variety of divisions go, we're going to have to go with the homegrown talent rather than bring in a mercenary overseas or big name player who will stick around for a few seasons then move on. I think you're going to see a reversal of how football was run, going back to like the 60s and 70s, where there's the more homegrown talent. Um, uh, I think bench warming on big money is stupid. It devalues what you're doing. Um, and Foden is pushing for some first team places, and I think he will eventually crack that nut, and he will get into the Man City side. But it will take him longer than if he went to another club where they go right. Yeah, we'll slot into our midfield, attacking midfield sense right away. We'll put you in. I don't think he's getting the game time that he needs. And you could just argue that about a whole host of English players and youth products across not just the Premier League, but across all four professional leagues in the Football League. You could argue that. It's easier at the lower levels for younger players to get first team football. But the loan system needs looking at, and the transfer system needs looking at, and we could see definitely more homegrown talent in the years to come, in the short to medium term, because of the current crisis. But I think also the massive wages, the massive transfers, I think that's got to change. And there needs to be a culture shift. when you've got League One and League Two arguing for a salary cap to be put before the EFL for a vote, that's going to cause a knock-on effect for the Championship and the Premier League as well. I think football needs to realise that it's not immune from crisis. When times were good, clubs were still going out of business. I can mention Bury and Gretna in Scotland, for example. So yes, when times were good, clubs have been going out of business. Now that we've really hit a brick wall, without fundamental changes to how the sport is governed, run, where the finances come from, how the money is spent, the sport will be on its knees. And when you've got 2 out of the 4 leagues in the football league structure, we'll class the Premiership in that. I will say this: when you're over half the professional clubs in this country saying we need a salary cap, it tells you something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. And we know that financial fair play doesn't work. So this is telling you something's gone horribly wrong here. So until football can grasp the situation, if the lower leagues go tits up, football is in deep, deep shit. But the greed is, I think, still blinkering players and the clubs, because you've still got the standoff between the PFA and the clubs, and there's no universal resolution. It's up to the individual clubs and playing squads themselves to go, oh, we've had enough of this. We're going to come to the discussion table. We're going to come to the agreement table, and we're going to agree something. And some of the big clubs are making themselves, and some of the big name players are making themselves look really foolish and out of touch. And the whole handling of the crisis has been a mess. There needs to be more British youngsters in NHL drafts. They need to be good enough. Plain and simple, they need to be good enough. And I can definitely see some very green shoots in British ice hockey, but the players need to be good enough to be considered. They need to really perform. And again, the quality level of the Elite League is definitely improving. The quality level of the National League below is clearly improving. There's definitely a pathway there. There's definitely massive growth in the sport. But I was watching the Spitted Chicklets podcast on YouTube the other day, and they had the interview with Ryan Baden. Now, he played for the Milton Keynes Lightning when they're in the Elite League, and he does not paint a happy picture of how that team was run. If the Elite League is to be taken seriously, and if the game and the sport is to grow and grow, and we get more British players in the NHL draft and the AHL draft for that matter as well, then the teams need to be better run, and owners need to be honest about their financial situation. When Milton Keynes went up to the Elite League, they should never have left the EPIHL, which has now become the National League setup. They should have never gone up a level. Guildford have made a success of it, but Milton Keynes, well, they're still a team. They've had to rebrand themselves, new ownership, a new agreement with Planet Ice for the rink time, which nearly crippled them. The old ownership didn't have a clue what they were doing, couldn't even pay players on time. They either didn't have the money or they lied about not having the money. And this comes across, this comes across quite blatantly in Ryan Bannon's. He's not a main big name player. He didn't actually play a single game in the NHL, but he played a lot of time in the AHL. But he was called up to Phoenix and Pittsburgh on several occasions, but didn't actually play a game. When you've got a player who's played in a variety of leagues around the world, including in Europe, saying this is one of the worst experiences I've ever had, it shows you the problems that British ice hockey still has with bad ownership. Edinburgh Capitals is another example. And he did say, well, he didn't mind the small dressing rooms, he didn't mind the smaller rinks and the limited facilities. What he cared about was not being told the truth by ownership, and ownership clearly not being fit for purpose. And that's a problem that, I think hamstrings development. Is owners who clearly don't have a clue what they're doing. And it's not just ice hockey, it's football. We've seen it with football, we've seen it with rugby league, rugby union. We've seen it in a variety of sports where there are certain people who own a sports team, not just here, but anywhere across the world who clearly are not suitable owners of the team. Clearly do not know what they're doing. And we've seen it before. And it will continue to happen until proper stringent rules are put in place which are properly enforced. So financial fair play and fit of proper persons test. They are laughable because they're not rigorously enforced. Simon Jordan made an interesting point saying, void the season, give the parachute payments given to the possible relegated teams or to the top the Championship plus 20% of their Premier League payments next season. That's interesting. Yes, Brighton and Hove Albion have come out this morning and said that they're not in favour of playing at neutral venues behind closed doors. They've stated that. And 10 clubs are reported in the Premier League. That's half the league saying we don't want the league and league restarted. Just call it. Don't void it. Call it. No relegation. Promote 2 or 3 from the Championship. Probably 2 or possibly 4. 2014 league. It's doable. It's done in, and do the same for Championship, League One, and League Two. Call the seasons as they are, because Liverpool have only got to get 2 wins or 6 draws, whatever comes quicker. They don't have to get much to get over the line. There's calls towards Celtic, the Championship in Scotland. PSG got awarded the title in France, but they went ahead with relegation. I just say, I would say cancel the season. Don't completely void it. Call it as is. Make the positions that are there final. No relegation. Promote a cup. Enlarge the Premiership. Enlarge the Championship, League One and League Two. So you promote several teams up from the non-league as well. Scrap the League Cup next season because no one cares about it anyway. Because really no one cares about the League Cup. It's a farce of a competition these days with the stupid way it's been reformatted and the stupid branding and the midweek games that no one wants to go to. Go into next season whenever you can and have a bigger relegation pool from next season and then restructure the leagues like that. Oh, Carabao. Oh, God. I mean, it's a Thai company that has some tax issues. The League Cup has been so devalued, most fans are calling for it to be scrapped or completely redone. And the fixturing for it is, we'll play it midweek and we'll have 2-legged, ties for it. What? And it's lost. I mean, I'm a Blackburn fan. Our last trophy was what was called the Worthington Cup, which was the League Cup back in 2002. So yes, my club has had success in winning this trophy in my lifetime, and I was very, it was a very, great day for the club. Winning silverware for the first time in I think 7 years or something. But they took the final off free-to-air TV. They took the semi-finals off free-to-air TV. It's all behind a paywall, so that already discounts a load of people's interest because they're not willing to pay for Sky or BT. They don't want to pay the subscription, which is fair because it's extortionate. Then you have League Cup ties in midweek. It brings in hardly any revenue because no one. If you look at the League Cup games that are broadcast, look how empty the stands are. You've got 8:00 kickoffs or 7:45 kickoffs midweek. No one turns up to watch the games. The final is not on free-to-air TV. It's a cup final. The semi-finals used to be on free-to-air TV, not anymore. That's not been the case for a very long time. So it doesn't get any exposure. The League Cup used to actually mean something. It doesn't anymore. It's been completely devalued by UEFA taking away the Cup Winners' Cup, but also the TV deal for it. There were no games on free-to-air TV of the League Cup. None. Fans don't like that. Fans do not also like pointless away days where almost every League Cup ties midweek and at silly o'clock in the evening. So away fans get screwed anyway. And yeah, viewership is just crap. It's been completely devalued over the last 20 years. It does not bring in revenue at all. Well, it does. It brings in some, but it doesn't really bring in the revenue it should. And the way it's formatted with clubs entering at various stages of it as well is farcical. 2-legged semi-finals. I mean, who still does that apart from the Champions League and Europa League, which I think also needs to be completely restructured because managers whinge about fixture congestion. yet they want to be in as many cup competitions as possible. The way around this is to completely change how the Champions League and Europa League are played. You get rid of the group stage and make it straight knockouts. One game, not two-legged ties. One game ties, straight knockout, no replays. Streamline it, like the FA Cup. You get rid of replays completely. One game, winner takes all. Bang, like the Cup Winners' Cup used to be, but they took that away. And you've got these meaningless group games that mean nothing, where the third place team in a Champions League group drops down to the Europa League. You're being rewarded for failing. That makes no sense to me. You get rewarded for being shit. And there have been teams, I do believe there have been teams that have finished third in the group, got into the Europa League, won the Europa League. I'm like, well, you've got a second chance for being shit. You have been rewarded for failing in this group stage, which is pointless. You've been rewarded for failure, but then you go into the weaker competition anyway, which you've just gone and won. So it makes a mockery of the competition in the Europa League, and it makes a mockery of the Champions League. I think they really need to reformat the Europe, because they're going to have to play straight knockouts in this condensed Champions League, Europa League tournaments they're going to have in August. They're going to have to play condensed straight knockout, like the World Cup, Euros, with straight knockouts. There's no way they can play two-legged ties. And a lot of fans want to see the scrapping of the group stage, make it straight knockouts, which I think is the way to go. And then you don't know who you're going to get in the next round. Put everyone in a hat to make it a proper draw every round, like the FA Cup and League Cups. You don't know who you're going to be playing in the next round, which means you can't play a certain style. You have to play winner takes all. You can't be like, oh yeah, well, it's a two-legged tie. We've got the aggregate. Oh, we're going to be playing Galatasaray in the next round. They play a certain style. Okay, well, we'll rest these players. We've got the 2-goal away goal advantage. We'll just dot around until the draw is made. You don't know who you're going to play. Really, because then the big teams who've always underestimated the small teams can get a shock. Cup shocks happen. This is how the Cup Winners' Cup actually produced some magic, because it was straight knockouts. Some big teams lost in the Cup Winners' Cup. It did not actually benefit the big teams. You'll find, because the big teams can have a couple of bad games in the group stage and it doesn't affect them against weaker opposition. We've seen Celtic beat Barcelona, for example. That was a one-off knockout. Celtic have just hammered Barcelona and embarrassed them. So it doesn't actually just benefit the big teams, because the big teams have to show up. With a group stage and a two-legged knockout stages, they can have a bad game and get away with it. If you go straight knockouts, you can't have a bad game and get away with it. So the pressure is on, and you have to perform. So this is where the two-legged system, allows you to actually have a bad game and get away with it. And then okay, right, we've had a bad game, we've got away with it, we've got a 2-goal deficit, we're at home. Well, we average 4 goals at home this season. They average 1 goal away this season. We can do it. If you have a straight knockout, that little team is going to be very, very hungry going, we've only got one chance to beat this big guy, not two, we've got one. We haven't got 2 legs, we've got one. The big team cannot afford to take the little team lightly. And if you look at the historical Cup Winners' Cup, there are some very, very outside the box teams have won that competition over the years. I think it's a great idea. We've seen many a cup upset in straight knockout, FA Cup, League Cup in the past. It's happened. It happens more regularly than people care to accept. I mean, Leeds United, when they were in League One, beating Man United at Old Trafford 1-0. Admittedly, a decade ago, but 1-0. One of the best days of football I think I've ever seen. I think, again, if you have, after each round, your name goes in the hat like the FA Cup, but if the little team gets the home ground advantage, it completely dilutes the big team. And yet, I think UEFA would have to change their regulations on stadiums, because Atalanta have to play in the San Siro at the moment, because apparently their stadium doesn't meet UEFA standards. Because UEFA want to make as much money as possible, because their stadium isn't big enough, apparently. Atalanta's home stadium is like, 19,500. The San Siro can seat like 90,000. So UEFA want to maximise their revenue. They don't give a toss about the club's hometown advantage there. I think it does make it interesting, though, if, let's say, Atalanta are drawn at home and UEFA actually pass their stadium as UEFA standard, because it's smaller capacity, and they are playing at Barcelona. They have proven with their style of football this season, this was the format, single knockout. They could easily put 4 past Barcelona. Easy. Easy. They play a style that, if they get going, can be destructive to the opposition. I think it works a lot better because the big team cannot underestimate the little team, and the little team will play harder. Because instead of having 2 chances where they could get that away goal, they only have 1. And that's the same for the big team. They can't take the little team lightly because they don't have a second game to get themselves out of a hole. We've seen Celtic beat Barcelona. Is it? No, it's to generate income for UEFA. It does not. Trust me, UEFA are greedy like FIFA. It creates fixture congestion massively. And also the aggregate score is on away goals. So you could have a thrilling second one, but because you could have a thrilling first leg, the 2-legged thing, extra games for players, and then people constantly whinge about players being exhausted for the World Cup and Euros. Managers constantly complain about fixture congestion. You cannot really have a really effective winter break because you've got that second game in the knockout stages of Europa League and Champions League. It screws up with that. 1 game knockouts. Simple. UEFA's gone after that rather than what fans actually want. Fans actually want the group stage to disappear because it means teams that are just there are there. There are pointless dead rubbers, which no one cares about. Pointless. And the team that finishes third in the group automatically has a second chance. So the group stage currently rewards failure. You can be hopeless in the Champions League, get into the Europa League, which is the weaker competition, and you can go on and win that. You are rewarded for being shit. But no one has chip shops in Europe. Let's put that out there. Bars, most bar owners and residents are terrified of football fans because they're not fans, they're hooligans. You go to Europe, when a big football match is on, the locals who don't really have an interest in the game see the hooligans turn up, they barricade their stores. They generally, it's not as positive as you think. You've got to go to Europe when football is on, and you will see locals going, "Oh Christ, there's a game tonight," and you will see them quite literally in fear. The local transport gets smashed up, restaurants, bars, there's brawls in the street. They don't like it as much as you think. I've been out in Naples, I've been out in Rome when there's football on, and you see fans, normal fans go to the game, and then you know when the ultras are about because the locals get very, very scared and they shut up their restaurant, they shut up their shop early, they board their windows, they move their car because they know at full time there's going to be trouble, there's going to be disorder, possible violence. They protect their property. You honestly, my cousin's been out in Argentina when River Plate got relegated, and shop owners, they shut their shutters, they barricaded their shops, and they told, it was cafes, they locked up for an hour, told the customers to come inside for safety. It's not as nice as you think in Europe. And I've been all over London to watch football. I've been all over the South Coast. I've been all over the home counties watching the FA Cup. You can definitely see on the eyes of locals who have no real interest in match day, there's a bit of apprehension on their face if you look closely. If you look closely at some of the locals, yeah, they get a bit apprehensive because they know there's going to be trouble. And that's the problem with football. Any other sport, the locals come out, and if it's rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey, cricket, tennis, the locals will come out and they'll be very, very supportive of that sporting event taking place in their city. You put football in a city which isn't, and you can see the apprehension. It's an own thing. The hooligan element attached to football has created an apprehension which could be misplaced. But when you've got certain teams, you know, if let's say Millwall, West Ham are playing, and you live in the East End of London or the South of London, and you're not a Millwall fan or a West Ham fan, you know there's going to be trouble where you live. If you are a Palace Brighton, right, and Palace are playing Brighton and Brighton playing Palace, you know there's going to be trouble. You get apprehensive. It's a thing. It's Blackburn Burnley. I mean, that's more of a religious hatred up there. Celtic Rangers, you know there's going to be trouble. Hibs Hearts, it doesn't matter if you follow football or not. You know there's going to be trouble at certain games, certain teams, and you've got those away fans coming down or those home fans coming down, and you live nearby, or you have a company or a restaurant, a cafe, a little bar, a burger van, you know you're going to make some money, but you could also have to phone the insurance company and say, "Why is my window being put through?" Oh yeah, football fan. Oh, and yeah, your business could be aptly smashed to pieces. I've been to I've been to the Medeski. Medeski's in an industrial state. That's probably why you notice a lot of modern stadiums aren't put nearer residential areas. They're put further away from residential areas and more industrial areas to avoid the clash between residents. Two-legged European finals. You are nuts, right? You are absolutely. That hasn't happened for a long time. Two-legged finals is not a thing anymore. No one wants them. The players don't want them. The fans don't want them. The UEFA don't want them. You have to understand that. What I find really funny is, the players want to play in every game. The managers want to have as many trophies as possible, but they complain about fixture congestion. You put an extra you put a two-legged final in there. Jesus Christ! I think there's a reason why we don't have replays in the FA Cup fifth round onwards. There is a reason. There is a reason why the French have got rid of their League Cup, partly because the French are different than everyone else, and I think other French teams have got bored of PSG winning everything, so they'll just take one of those trophies away from PSG so they can win less. Bit of humour there, but no, semi-finals, quarter-finals, just make it straight knockout. The Euros and the World Cup do that very successfully. Never ever had to have a replay in any knockout game at an international tournament. Why should club football be a little bit backward? Fans, it costs them money. Players, two-legged final, Jesus Christ. The amount of emotion you put in to a game to then have to do it all again a second time, and the mental and physical. No, I think other sports straight knockouts seem to work. I don't see why football seems to have this perversion of we've got to have two legs. I really don't, but it is what it is. I mean, I'm just gonna check my emails quickly, but I think it's football has gone down a path where the greed has taken over. It's now paying the price at a time of crisis. Yeah, it's made a lot of money in the last 20 years when we've had, especially in the last 12 years, where we've had this financial crisis. We've had a bad recession. We've had living standards being squeezed for the average person like you or me. Yet football has continued to make stupid amounts of money in that period. The problem is they didn't save. No, I don't have BT Sports, so I couldn't enjoy it because I'm not paying silly amounts of money for a substandard television program. I don't pay for subscription sports because I think that is wrong. That major competitions are behind a paywall. You can keep the league games behind a paywall. I couldn't give a toss about that because I honestly believe the quality of football is a lot less now than what it was 20 years ago. And why should I pay BT any extra money for an already shocking service that I already have? The internet and phone that we have is not good enough. Why should I pay them even more on top when BT Sport initially was meant to be a free-to-air channel? So yeah, I basically said to BT, yeah, but I'm still not paying for it. Fans paying up already. I've argued this. I'm going to continue with my position. Streaming services, yeah, but then you are aware there are illegal streaming services, and that stream can get shut down at any time. And you've still got to pay for a VPN that may or may not screw up your computer. I'm not that stupid. I'm not giving UEFA or any kind of football governing body or anyone any more money. I think they earn enough. I think. No. Oh, what? No, shut up, phone. I think, football's got made enough money out of the fan over the last 25 years. It's time to give back to the fan by giving more free-to-air coverage. That's my opinion. I'm not moving on that. I've entrenched my position. You get more fan involvement. And BT's hemorrhaging money. So when BT goes, enough's enough, we're losing too much money, it's going to be more damaging for football than this current crisis, I can tell you that. Especially when the premise for them getting the Champions League and Europa League was initially when they set up the TV channel, it was meant to be free to air. It stayed free to air for not very long, a couple of weeks actually. Now they put it behind a paywall and they keep putting the subscription up, and the quality. Jake Humphrey should not present any sports program. He is hopeless. Jake Humphrey is absolutely abysmal, and I'm not paying for any streaming services because then have to pay for a VPN so I can change my location, and that's just a farce. And half these streaming sites are illegal, so they can get shut down midstream. It's pointless. It's pointless. I just say put it back on shared TV rights where you have subscription and free to air. It worked brilliantly for 25 years. I don't know why they took that away, but again, greed. It's all to do with that. It's got nothing to do with what the fans want. It's what makes the bank balance and the accountants happy. Honestly, I used to watch the Cup Winners' Cup on Channel 5 and BBC as a kid, and I saw many a great game. Didn't cost me a penny, didn't cost my family a penny apart from a TV license. So, yeah, and that was taken away in 1999. As was the Intertoto Cup as well. They got rid of that, which I thought was a bit of a mistake. But UEFA just went for the money. They didn't go for what the fans wanted. They went for what their bank balance suited them. And I'm not going to move from my position there because I think it's been proven you put sport behind a paywall, you lose fans. Oh yeah, it will do. This is why football's not my favourite sport. It hasn't been for a very, very long time. It's nowhere near as successful as it should be. And you've got an obesity crisis. You've got issues with participation, quality level as well. I would argue the quality of football is not what it was 15, 20 years ago. Wages are too high. Ticket prices are too high. And we were told, and this is the lie we were told, is that subscription TV, ticket price won't go up massively. It'll be sustainable. Oh, so that's why yeah, right. The average season ticket price for Arsenal is nearly a month's wages for me. And I'm a sports fan. A month's wages for a season ticket, fuck off. I'm not paying nearly 1,600 quid, which is a month's wages for me without overtime for a season ticket. It's not happening. I've got friends who are Arsenal fans who've seen maybe 1 or 2 games in their lifetime, not on TV, obviously, going to games because they can't afford to go. The clubs, the FA, the Premier League, the EFL, the players are thinking about this. And the current wage debate between the PFA and the clubs amplifies that. It just shows, even though the players say we'd rather defer our wages, we still want to get paid in full. We're not willing to take a pay cut. We're still going to be greedy, but we're going to try and win hearts and minds because we've given some money to the NHS. Hardly any of them pay their full rate of 50% tax. So I have no sympathy for the players either. The clubs, they're trying to be cheeky out of this crisis so they can maximise their profits in the long term. They can go fuck themselves. We have some really shocking owners in football. I haven't been to a football match in God, 14, 15 years. I've not been to a game. And I have no intention of going one soon. No intention. None. I'm sorry. I mean, why should I also go, the streaming service as well? Great. The streaming services, these games should be on free to air as well as subscription. You should have a choice. I'm not paying BT Sport money. I watch the Champions League and Europa League finals because it's on YouTube because it's free. And it is. I go. This is shocking broadcasting. For what it is. It's absolute shit. Jake Humphrey is a hopeless presenter. He was hopeless on the BBC with F1. And BT. They can have him. The problem is my mobile phone network's EE, my internet's EE, my family's internet's BT. My bill keeps going up every 3 months to prop up a failing TV company. And I've told BT that I'm not going to pay this anymore. You're ripping us off. The fact that BT Sport has hemorrhaged nearly £500 million since it was set up, and the guy who came up with the idea has been sacked, tells you that BT Sport is not working as it should be. And the subscription sports TV companies are trying to hold sport to ransom. And people are like, I'm going to cancel my subscription. Go fuck yourself. And now they're trying to be difficult with allowing, when games do resume, free-to-air TV coverage. They're saying no. Yeah, they're demanding their money back. So something has to change. Something has to give. There's a reason why I've gone to ice hockey. My local team, literally down the road, just down the road. It doesn't cost much for a ticket. Season ticket isn't that bad either. That's why I watch the NRL. I found the NRL Watch NRL website, which is actually through the NRL. 120 quid for a whole year. That's 12 quid a month. To pay for a Sky Sports, BT Sport, and then a Premier Sports subscription, you're looking at 2 months' wages a year for just that. Sport is now seen as a pastime for the rich only. The working class now, you're not allowed to enjoy that. And why should I have to go down a pub full of pissheads who, well, are loud and obnoxious, so I can't even hear the game or the commentary because you've got pissheads who are probably going to start fighting each other at some point, who are obnoxious, rude, racist, homophobic. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna bring some of my friends into that environment, or a kid even. It's something that I think is wrong. Cricket's finding out the hard way that the ECB is basically owned by Sky Sports because Sky Sports are calling the shots on the 100. The ECB are a toothless organisation. You don't share my sentiment. Okay, well, when sports start going bust, which they will, because the TV companies are trying to take all their money back, when they start going bust, and your favourite team, Arsenal in this case, where Mesut Ozil is refusing to give up some of his wages because he's a greedy little shit, who's talentless and goes missing, because he's been missing for, 5 years now, Mesut Ozil? Have you seen this man? His eyes, look at his paycheck, and then fans go, where's the product? When sports go going bust, which they will, your sentiment will change. When sports need to recover and need fans to come back, they cannot charge the prices they are charging for fucking TV money, for ticket prices. Season tickets are extortionate. The transfers, the wages, they can't afford it. So when the Premier League actually goes tits up, which it will, when the money bubble bursts, which it will, football will be on its knees, and I'll have no sympathy for it because it has been greedy for 30 years, has taken fans for mugs. The players are pretty much vacant. They are a talentless bunch. You take away football from them, they can't do anything else. You seriously have to. You cannot tell me that the subscription prices that Sky, BT, Premier's not so bad, but you have to have a Sky box to get Premier Sports, which I think is wrong because Sky have got them by the balls. If you look at the subscription prices, how can you justify saying 1,500 quid a year for a Sky Sports subscription? That is a month's wages. A season ticket for Arsenal, 1,500 quid a year. That's another month's wages. That's £3,000 a year. If you were on my wage bracket as an Arsenal fan, you have to pay to watch your team play. If you either want to watch it at home, or the season ticket for all home games, or both. Popular. Man City have to pump in crowd noise because fans do not turn up to games. Are you telling me that one of the most successful teams in the last decade can't fill out its stadium? And foreign buyers, they're doing it as a tax dodge. They're investing money overseas so the taxman in their own country cannot take the money. Also, when they lose money, it's a tax write-off. That's what they do it. They don't do it for the love of the game. They do it for the love of money. They've worked out that professional football in Europe is very lucrative. This is why the Italian league has been fixed for 20 years. I could probably find a website where I could show you next season's Italian league football results in full. Look at China. Look at Asia. The leagues are all fixed. It has been proven. Fans do not show up anymore. They have given up. The organised criminal triads and gangsters are now looking at European football and cricket. Table tennis. They have fixed everything because there is too much money in sport. Far too much money in sport. There is a reason why the NRL in Australia, the players, all of them agreed 75% pay cut because the league would go bust if they cannot play games. The AFL had to get a $500 million loan from the Australian government to tie it through this lockdown phase. They have very lucrative TV deals. They nearly went bust last month. Are you telling me nothing will change? You clearly are not looking at the facts. You are not looking at the fact that League One and League Two are screaming for a salary cap. Otherwise, clubs will go out of business. They have basically said if we do not have a salary cap and something brought in ASAP, our leagues will cease to exist. These are professional clubs. If over half of the professional football clubs in the top 4 divisions in English football are going, we need a salary cap, for God's sake, we need one. One European league. Okay, right. We've seen multiple hockey leagues. We have seen multiple clubs in multiple football leagues go bust. We have seen Siena. We have seen Parma in Italy. We have seen multiple clubs in Belgium and Holland having to merge. We have seen the Greek league pretty much fixed. The Turkish league pretty much fixed. We have seen the KHL have to change its name. We have seen teams in the KHL ice hockey go bust because they cannot afford the travel costs. Rugby, the Italian league had to basically go, right, we cannot compete financially. Our 2 best teams are going to join the Pro League. We have seen the Pro League, the Celtic Crusaders, a Welsh Pro 14 team when it was Pro 10, go bust within a year. Right now, the 4 Pro 14 clubs in Wales are on the verge of bankruptcy. The Welsh Union has furloughed all players and coaching staff. The 2 Scottish clubs have furloughed all players and coaching staff. Ulster in the Pro League have furloughed all players and coaching staff. They're on the verge of going bust right now. The multitude of clubs across Europe that have gone out of business. The leagues continue, the clubs don't. The fact that even in the German 3rd division, they've had to cancel football at times because of match fixing allegations. Are you telling me? Really? Okay, well, look at the Italian Football League then. Look how empty some of the stadiums are. Please tell me that you cannot see. How can you justify ticket prices? How can you justify then the TV price? No, I'm having a fair debate with you because you seem to think that I'm mad. Can you justify to me the price for BT, Sky, whatever Amazon Prime, they want to have a bit of the pie. You want to have Now TV are probably going to want to have a bit of the pie. You've got Premier Sports, want a bit of the pie. Can you justify to me, and you work out, right? You work out all that costs. It's cheaper to get a TV license. People, I don't want to pay a TV license. I'm going to get all these streaming services, and you look at it going, okay. So all these people complaining of, Premier League. Look, I couldn't give a fuck about the Premier League. Okay, I really couldn't. Portsmouth went bust. They were run by corrupt. Milan Mandrich was allowed to nick £70 million of money out of that football club. It went to court. Harry Redknapp named his dog the bank account after his dog. They laundered £75 million of money and got away with it. Sunderland have gone into administration how many times? Bolton. Oh, shut up, fine. The Premier League, loads of clubs are racked with debt. The only reason why the Premier League keeps going is in times of good times, the debt gets covered up. Man United, the reason why the Glazers bought the club was not with their own money, it was with loans from other people. They owe other people billions and billions and billions of dollars. The reason why they can continue to own Man United is because the club itself makes £750 million a year. If the club was now actually a standalone entity, it will be profitable. Because it's owned by the Glazers, that profit it makes covers their debts. They did not buy the club with their own money. Chelsea, if it was standalone, bankrupt. Man City, standalone without the sheikhs, bankrupt. Right? The football is based upon debt. Half these transfer payments haven't even been made because of the collapse of the TV deals in Europe. And when you've got half the football league saying we're going to go out of business within weeks, trust me, I don't think they're lying. This is the lower league clubs. These are the clubs that are your bread and butter. Without these clubs, the football pyramid collapses. When you've had multiple clubs who have actually played in the football league, let's go put this out there, played in the football league, who have gone out of business and had to reform. I mean, Christ, Bury won League Two last season. They weren't allowed to start League One this season. They went out of business. The EFL let them go out of business, but they saved Bolton. If they were cherry picking which club to save there. You don't think fan participation's weaning? Look at AFC Wimbledon. I mean, they're a Premier League club. Then they dropped down the Championship. At one point, I think their highest gate receipts were 809 fans before they moved to Milton Keynes. Yeah, fans tuned out because of shitty owners. They got moved to Milton Keynes. Fans formed their own club. Clubs have got out of it. Sheffield Wednesday, Milan Mandrich managed to take all the money out of that club as well. You could at Chester City, they've gone out of business. Boston United, they got docked points several seasons in a row for financial irregularities because the owner was laundering money. And it doesn't matter they're in the lower league. Oxford United have gone from winning the League Cup and being on the verge of European football, had Liverpool not misbehaved at Hazel, to going out of the Football League and then coming back in again. Luton Town were on the verge of getting Premier League football about 15 years ago, ended up in the conference. Multiple teams have gone out of business. Rangers in the Scottish Premiership went completely bust, had to reform as a brand new entity. So you're telling me that football finances are brilliant. Okay, right. You have no idea how football administration works. You have no idea how much debt clubs are racked with. They are riddled with it. And if these transfer payments can't be made, oh my God, they're going to make massive losses. They were still paying off, Gareth Bale's Neymar's transfer to PSG. They're still paying that off. PSG are still paying Barcelona tens of millions of euros for Neymar, yet they could sell him back to Barcelona. They haven't paid all the money. He's technically loaned to them under finance. Football is racked with debt. Right? Absolutely racked with debt. Gretna going out of business. Scottish Premiership club 12 years ago. Rangers going out of business, reforming. Dunfermline, Livingston, Dundee United. Inverness Cali Thistle was actually a merger of two clubs. So one club in Inverness could survive. That's Scottish football. That's a financial disaster. There are multiple clubs in Belgium. Anderlecht's under investigation for corruption. They basically bribed their way into so many league titles over the years. They're being investigated. Germany, multiple clubs have gone out of business in Germany over the Bundesliga era. Bolton were literally on the verge of going out of business in August. The EFL decided to allow Bolton to take place. They fucked Bury because Bolton made the EFL more money. Yet fans aren't showing up Bolton games. No. You look at average crowd attendances, they're going down. Look at the FA Cup the last couple of seasons. Trust me. And it's not just a football problem. Oh, no. I have seen in British ice hockey 5 leagues come and go. I have seen 10 teams go out of business. It's not just a football problem. It's called really bad sports governance. And the fact that I'm ranting about this is proving how passionate I am. But the Sky Sports killed the Ice Hockey Super League in this country. They went, no, we're not going to broadcast it anymore because Murdoch is a bastard. Yet people still keep buying his publications and he still has shares in B Sky B. Blackburn, my team, £250 million worth of debt. Well, unless we get promotion back to Premier League, we're never paying that off. Not with the Venky's in charge. We've had it. We need promotion. But if we get promoted, we're relegated straight away. That's my club situation. Leeds. Look at Leeds. Christ. They went down as far as League One. But Bradford City, ex-Premier League club, went down to League Two. Oldham have basically gone out of business. They're just about surviving in League Two. Swindon Town have nearly gone bust several times in my lifetime. Reading have nearly gone bust. Norwich City have announced they're making £35 million in losses this year because of the 6-week lockdown. £35 million losses for not playing football for 6 weeks. So you're telling me football's fine. Okay. You're telling me that fans are going to be happy with how the sport is run. The fact the World Cup is going to Qatar tells me there's a massive problem. Football's governing bodies chasing the money. The FA could lose up to £150 million if the FA Cup is not played. That's up to. They're going to make losses. They could lose up to. And I imagine if the FA had actually been successful in flogging Wembley to Sahih Khan for half price, they'll be paying rent on a stadium they can't play games in. This shows you how badly administered football is. Then you can talk about cricket and the ECB. You're saying fans will come back. Fans are deserting cricket in droves. Put behind a paywall. They're trying to force the 100 down people's throats, and people are going, no, I'm not watching it anymore. Not if you bring this shit on. And cricket the ECB has already said that if they were able to host the 100 with packed cricket grounds and full TV viewership, they're still going to make a £7.5 million loss. Well done, ECB. Well done. And without playing it this year, they're making a loss. So the ECB face is losing £100 million. Well done, ECB. Well done. And they're still forging ahead with the 100 when people are saying just reformat the T20 Blast with all 18 top flight counties and have a two-tier system. We've got a working product that people want to watch. You've got a product that no one wants to watch. Great. So the ECB are going down the toilet. Welsh rugby's going down the toilet. Scottish rugby's going down the toilet. Irish rugby's on the verge of going on the precipice. French rugby can't be far behind because they've been told there's going to be no public gatherings until September. It's going to be interesting. I can't see how football can survive in its current format. I don't think the Champions League is going to get played in August. I don't think the league will resume. We're waiting to see what happens with Germany. They pushed back their start date to I think it's the 16th of May, and that's provisional. And it all depends on the German government giving the go-ahead. And then federal to state. There is no way in my mind that football can take place. I think the seasons are going to be called. If the French League have called it, the Belgian League have called it, the Dutch League have called it, these are big players with UEFA. None of them are run well run. None of them are. There's no transparency. None of them are. There's corruption all over the place. Funding's a shambles. I don't think any sport's well run. Really, in reality, some are run better than others, but no sport's well run financially. Absolutely none. Football just amplifies that. The wealthiest sport in the world is a shambles right now because no football association has saved money during the good times for when there could be a crisis. They have taken money and then dished it out all over the place, misappropriated it. Very few clubs have got cash. I mean, Barcelona are basically bankrupt right now. No, snooker's not well run financially. It's full of corruption. There's match fixing allegations on a weekly basis out of snooker. The snooker only survived because they went on a ruthless expansion in the last 10 years, making more events ranking events. I think there's only 4 major events now that aren't ranking events. They went on a ruthless expansion to survive. It's run by the Hearns. There is no way that's well run. The Hearns are greedy. They will take money out of the sport. Absolutely. Snooker is riddled with match fixing allegations since the Hearns have come along. Match fixing allegations since they've really revamped the sport are rife in the sport. Rife. Maguire and Higgins, 2 of the biggest Scottish players, 2 of the biggest players in the sport. Multiple accusations of match fixing against them. Several players banned last year. The ruthless expansion of the sport and the more money coming in, the match fixing allegations have gone through the roof. Same with cricket. It's riddled with corruption allegations in snooker. Absolutely riddled with it. And if that's good governance, be it financially or otherwise, if you've got a well-governed sport financially and in governance sense, you shouldn't have match fixing allegations going through the roof. You shouldn't have to ban players. It's not transparent with the governance, and riddled with corruption allegations. Absolutely riddled. Since the Hearns have taken over real hardcore control and really done this expansion with so many ranking events now and more money coming in. Yes, it's very popular in China, but China is also the home of match fixing. The Asian gangsters make a lot of money out of illegal gambling, and snooker has gone to places where gambling is illegal and match fixing has gone through the roof. And snooker is a sport riddled with corruption allegations. Absolutely riddled. Why I don't watch it anymore. I'm not sure that I'm watching a player playing to win, especially when it's Higgins or Maguire involved. There are allegations. See, even you admit that Higgins is Higgins and Maguire. Stephen Lee took bribes to lose. He got banned for 10 years. These are high-profile European, British players, especially taking backhanders or being accused of taking backhanders. Tells you something's wrong. That does not tell you that the sport is run financially correct. If the sport, because it's an individualistic sport, you win prize money. You don't have a salary as such. You win prize money. You have your sponsors pay some of your salary, but you win prize money. When you've got 3 very successful players on the tour, one of whom found guilty, 2 others accused of it multiple times, may I add, not just one off, it's multiple allegations. And they get very shitty when they're, the media question them on this. It tells you that sport is not run financially well. If a sport is run financially well and transparently and well governed, you don't have those allegations, or you have less of them. There's going to be cheating and corruption in any sport. The better run an organisation is, the less likely you have a Higgins-Maguire kind of scandal. I mean, there were 2 Chinese and a Welsh player caught last year that were banned. Bingham's been done for betting offences. If you have a well-run, transparent sport, you are less likely to get those negative corruption kind of headlines. You're getting that a lot with snooker. There's a lot of allegations of a lot of players in the top 100 taking backhanders. And then in the top 250, it's rife. Allegations are rife. If you have a transparent, or as close to a transparent system as possible, where when you have a vote on a sport's change in governance, when you have the general managers meeting with all the teams, and it's on the record, very transparent, you tend to have less issues than what you do. And then O'Sullivan, sticks his oar in, going, it's not that bad. It really is. I don't watch snooker as much now because I cannot guarantee the sport that I'm watching is fair and free of interference. Just putting it out there. That's my personal opinion. I watch less of it because what's the situation? It doesn't really crop up because if you're trying to fix ice hockey, that means your players aren't trying, which means you're more likely to get your living bells kicked out of you physically. It's so obvious when you can tell a team isn't trying because it's such a physical, brutal game that if you're putting a half-assed effort in, it's going to be so obvious that you're not trying. It's so obvious when a team isn't trying. It would be so obvious when a team just is allowing an attacking team just to skate through and score. Even when you've got a bad team on the ice that are really not are mismatched, and I've seen several mismatches where there's a team that isn't very good against a team in the same league that is clearly a much better team. I've seen it in British ice hockey a lot because you get a lot of these mismatches when a new team joins a new league. They've got a season or two to adapt or die. I would say the keeper is the weakest link. You can just tell when a team isn't trying. And if you don't put 100% effort in, you're going to get hurt. And not because the other team will figure out this team's cheating. It's a very physical. You don't put 110% in. You don't put your body on the line. You half-arse it. When you do have that big collision, centre ice or on against the boards, you're getting hurt. It's the same in rugby. If you don't put 110% of effort in, if you're half-arsing it and you're going for a ruck or a tackle or a maul, you're going to get hurt. The rugby, thankfully, and ice hockey and rugby league haven't had match fixing allegations as their main problems. They've had substance abuse issues as their main issues. But I've never watched it. I mean, I watch the NHL quite religiously. I watch European ice hockey when I can on Free Sports at my mate's house quite religiously as well. That includes the Elite League. And I watch the National League with my local team. I've watched a lot of ice hockey in the last 10 years. I have never watched a match where I think that game is fixed. I have never ever seen a game where I'm questioning the match on the ice. You can tell when a team is outclassed, absolutely. You can still tell when a team isn't trying. You can tell when a team is not trying. It's normally when their heads go down, they're losing 5-0, and they generally start fighting more. Ironically, when a team is getting battered, their heads will drop, but then they just go, right, we'll just play dirty. That's when you can tell that a team has still got a bit of fight in them. They've just given up on the game. They're not going to give up on the physicality. I have never seen a game in ice hockey where I can go, I'm questioning the result of that game. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I personally have never, with my own eyes, questioned a result of the game that I have seen. Football, on the other hand, I have seen quite a few football matches where I am questioning the quality of player that I am seeing from the quality of player on the field. Ice hockey, I think, is a bit more different because there is a draft system, because there is salary caps, because they try and make every team as competitive as possible. The draft system, it only really applies to the US and Canada when it comes to ice hockey, so to speak. You have junior level hockey, basically. You're draft eligible until a certain age. I think it's like 21. I think you're draft eligible till you can enter a redraft. If you enter a redraft, you're draft eligible till you're 22. So there's an age limit on when you can be drafted. Now, a lot of players have made the NHL by not being drafted. Okay. The overseas, you'll have obviously European players from the European leagues will also enter the draft. And you have, I think, at the moment, I think it's 7 rounds. Could be 8. But I know it's the minimum of 7 rounds. You've got 31 teams, so you have 31 picks per round. Now, some teams will have multiple picks in a round because they have traded for them when it comes to trade. So let's say we look at the Erik Karlsson trade from Ottawa to San Jose. Pieces went both ways. So players from both teams, from Ottawa and San Jose, were part of this Karlsson trade. Also draft picks for different years, and some of them are conditional when teams finish. So you have your first overall, and I think the first overall pick, I think the bottom 6 teams get put in a lottery percentage-wise. So somewhere in the bottom 6 teams in the league, they get put in a lottery hat. There are chances of, I think, it's 30% of the bottom team of the league getting first overall pick now. They've changed the lottery odds. So the bottom 6 teams get put in a hat, and then they draft from there. And then after that, it's your league finishing position, or the position you're knocked out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, some teams may not have a draft pick until the second round or the third round because they've traded picks to other teams for players so they can strengthen their team right now. They've traded prospects and players for draft picks. It happens a lot. You go through all 7 rounds. Some of these first rounders will play the following season. The second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounders may take 1, 2, 5 years to make it to the NHL. Some may never make it at all. And some of the first rounders will be complete blowouts and may not ever play an NHL game. Whereas a late draft pick in the 5th, 6th round, like a Pavel Datsyuk, will end up being a superstar Hall of Famer and winning multiple Stanley Cups and player awards. So it does happen where you can get some late round picks who end up being superstars, and there's some first rounders that really fail to achieve the heights that they should. Nail Yakupov being probably the most recent example of the first overall pick being an absolute disaster and a massive arsehole, and hence why he's no longer playing in the NHL. And he's back in the KHL where arseholes are tolerated because, God, his attitude sucked. And when they do the draft interviews, scouts will interview players to see if they're suitable to be selected or traded for later on. And Brian Burke is a very famous former GM, that's general manager in ice hockey. He's now also a media commentator and a media analyst now. He's also been a lawyer as well, so he's a very interesting character. He said Nail Yakupov's draft interview, the scout who was interviewing him, and he jumped across the table and punched him. He was sullen, obnoxious, abusive, arrogant, and basically the scouting team nearly got in a punch up with the player. He went first overall to Edmonton, and he had one good season, and then he bounced around. He ended up, I think, playing some time in St. Louis and Colorado, and he was very quickly out the league. He didn't do very well. I think he spent a season or two in St. Louis. I think he spent some time in Colorado. He spent a few seasons in Edmonton. He had one decent first. I think his first year was his best year, and then his production disappeared. And there were other players not happy with his attitude, not happy with his style of play, his training work ethic. They didn't get on with him, and he very quickly left the NHL and he went back to Russia, where he's been playing ever since. I think he's been playing in Russia now for about 3 seasons. I don't think he's coming back to the NHL somehow. I think he burnt his bridges very, very quickly. But back to your question about why I think it's the best sport run financially, I'm going to go for governance. I'm just going to say governance, because with good governance, you generally have a pretty tight ship financially as well. It may not be the wealthiest sport in the world, but if you have good governance, you generally have a sport that's better run financially. I don't think any sport is perfectly run, because sport is a business when it comes to professionals. Percentage of Indigenous players. I'm in the UK, so I'm going to go for my players from ethnic minorities in this case. In the UK, the percentage of players from a BAME background, that's Black, Asian, and Middle Eastern backgrounds, is not a high proportion. So if you're talking about in British ice hockey, I think there's one 1.5% from ethnic minority backgrounds who come through, who are British players. That's not including overseas players, because there's a lot of Canadians and North and Americans who come over to play. We have had First Nations Canadians play in British ice hockey, which has been quite entertaining. In North America, again, the percentages aren't high, but they're going up. So if you look at the percentages of minority groups, I think black players, Afro-Caribbeans, make up, I think, 1% of all NHLers all time, and at the moment make up about 0.5% of the current player rosters. Those from Indigenous backgrounds, again, pretty small numbers at the highest level, although it is growing. But it's an expensive sport to play. It's an expensive sport to get into. The equipment costs money. It does cost a lot of money. The equipment. It's not a cheap sport to get into. You've got to have a family who are willing to give up roughly around £10,000 or $10,000 a year to get you through, or have that disposable income ready to invest in you playing. Up to it depends on where in North America or Europe you are. Europe, I think, is less expensive to play than North America, but you've got to have a family willing to pay a fair bit of money for equipment, skating lessons, team fees when you're in juniors, because you have to pay to be part of the team, your membership, club memberships, the away days, traveling, around, and then you get to the higher levels, and then you've got to pay your club memberships, again, your equipment. And the older you get, the more expenses you get, because the VAT it gets added on. So Europe, it's less expensive, I think, per head to play. But North America, you're looking at a fair bit of disposable income to get to juniors or minors. That's not even to get drafted by the NHL. That's just to get to the higher junior leagues or the regional professional leagues where you're not in the NHL, but you're earning some of your money back, just to make it to the lowest professional, like the SPHL or the LNAH in Quebec, or the ECHL if you're on the East Coast League, just to get to that level. It's expensive just to break through. And if you do get drafted by the NHL, or you make it up the ECHL to the AHL to the top European leagues, for example, if you're a North American, there's been a lot of cost along the way to then make it to the professional ranks. Only about, I think, 3 or 4% of hockey players ever play in the NHL globally, ever. That's all time. So you are in a small percentage, and then those that play over 100 games, again, is a lot less than you think. Those that end up playing over 100 games in the NHL is, again, a smaller percentage. And then you've got those who hit the 250 and then the 500 and then the 1,000 game mark. And you find a very small group of players who go over 1,000 games. And even less players that go over 1,000 points. So your Gretzkys, your Messiers, your Jagrs, they are a very elite bunch for a reason. Very elite bunch. There's a reason why Gretzky's records, only 1 out of the 63 records he has been broken. Is because you have such an elite bunch to get into. And the league is expanding. It's going to expand next year to 32 teams. So that gives you that little extra chance to get to the NHL. But no, it's a very elite league to get into. There's a reason why it's the best league in the world. There's a reason why it's the most elite league in the world. Is because very few players actually get to play even a game in it, let alone over 1,000. Very few players get that first game, and even fewer make it into double figures, and even fewer make it to 100, and then so on and so forth. So when you get to look at player careers of a player who's made 500 games, they're pretty elite. And then you look at the Hall of Famers and the eligibility requirements to get into the Hall of Fame, and you're like, okay, now I see why it's such an elite league in the world, why it is the best league. No, hands down. But yeah, anyway, thank you for being part of it. I know I disagree with you on some points, but I stand in my position when it comes to ticket pricing and the TV rights. They're going to have to change, and when it changes, players and the clubs are going to have to look at how much they ask for money, transfers, the wages, the agents fees. All that's going to have to be really readdressed and rapidly, because I can't see how, and this is just not just football, but across the board, I can't see how sport can justify the cost to the consumer, the fan, long term. I can't see that the model they have being sustainable. I can't. I cannot see how the current sports model is sustainable. But we do need sports to return, because yes, it does have an impact on the local economy. But when you, especially football, when you see a football event, a football match on, and you're in a city, and you don't necessarily have a horse in the race, okay? You will see the locals get very nervous when they see lots of, especially drunk, angry young men congregate. They do get exceptionally nervous because they know trouble is brewing. And this is what's going to happen next summer with the Euros. Is you're going to have all over the whole continent, and each country's got its own police laws and laws on large groups, alcohol in public places. You're going to see how the police deal with it in outside Wembley to the police in Azerbaijan deal with crowd disorder very differently. And it could be an interesting tool. I think UEFA are realising they've made a horrible mistake having it across the whole continent. Personally, they have also stated it will never happen again like that. So we shall see. And also with them moving the Euros back a year, what's going to happen with the Euros in 4 years' time? Will we have enough? Will they now be in odd-numbered years? Especially with the World Cup being taking place in later in 2022, not in the summer, but in technically the winter. Are we going to see a change to the international calendar when, what years tournaments take place in? That's going to be an interesting one. There's going to have to be a reset on international sport. But next year is going to be carnage. I think there's going to be so much going on that it will have some positive but some negative impacts. I think you have to see that next year's sporting fixture list, Jesus Christ, it's going to be an utter shambles. There's going to be so much on. There's going to be a lot of clashes, and the media companies, the broadcasters, be it subscription or pay-per-view or free-to-wear or online streaming, are going to have to work out, Christ, can we carry all this on our network at one time? Are we going to have, are we going to have enough logistics, the logistics behind this? Are we going to be able to cover the Euros and the Olympics? Are we going to have enough, infrastructure in place to do that? Are we going to be able to cover these multiple sports events all at the same time? It's going to be a mental year next year when it comes to sport. Absolutely bananas. And the broadcasters are going to have a big part to play in getting that sport across. And I think there's going to be greater calls for more accessibility, and greater calls for, if it is going to stay behind subscription, for the prices to drop. And I think this could be the beginning of the end of BT and Sky Sports' dominance of professional club sport. I think we could see a beginning of the end of that kind of model of broadcasting, where we're going to see it. We have to see a change. Personally, I think we have to see a change. There are streaming services available, yes, but those streaming services, a lot of them are illegal, and you just need accessibility. We're going to see next year get very, very crazy. We've got a lot of sport taking place in a very short space of time, and the broadcasters are going to be scrabbling, not only to broadcast the events, but make sure that, okay, we've done the Euros, now we've got to get to Wimbledon, now we've got to get to the Olympics, because the BBC and ITV do in this country do the football, BBC do the Wimbledon, they do the Olympics, so the BBC are going to be flat out. ITV have got the horse racing as well, and when that's all back on, so they're going to be flat out trying to get that broadcasting done. Channel 4's got some rugby, ITV, BBC all got rugby. They're going to be, oh Christ, the rugby's back on. You've got the Rugby League World Cup in the autumn. which hasn't moved yet. That's staying as is. So you've got the Euros in the summer, Rugby League, World Cup, summer, autumn. That's going to be a bit of a headache for the broadcasters. Enjoyment for the fans, though. A lot of this free to air TV. World Championship Ice Hockey, that's going to be on Premier Sports and Free Sports, but also on YouTube. So that's going to be interesting because they've had to move that back a year. It's just from April through till November next year is just going to be sporting paradise for me, but also sporting carnage for the broadcasters. But it's things have to change how we how the broadcasters work and how much money's in the sport. I think it's going to be a lot less. I don't think the pay-per-view broadcasters can keep charging the money they're charging because it's creating a division between the majority and the wealthy minority. And sport cannot be for a few; it's got to be for all. Otherwise, it's not really sport. It's just enthusiasts watching it and playing it. If you start taking it away from the masses, the sport dies. And I'm going to leave that there because I've been going for an hour and 50 minutes. It's been interesting. A lot of points discussed. One of the more, I wouldn't say heated, but more in-depth ones where, yeah, there are clearly things going on in professional sport that do need to change. And this crisis has highlighted what needs to change. So with World Rugby coming up the next 4 years with Bill Beaumont, it's going to be really tough. Really tough. And finance has been hot on the agenda in that election between him and Pishot. And there's a division there, and that's a sport that risks going the same way as FIFA. Rugby leagues and financial struggles. They've got to change their business model desperately. They've just received a massive loan from the British government, and how's that loan going to be repaid? The fans allowed back into grounds. Okay, I will finish with fans allowed back into grounds. What we're looking at with Germany, September at the earliest. What we're looking at in North America could be 2021. I would think, I would hazard a guess, it's later this year, probably October. September, October at the earliest. If the vaccine trials that Oxford University are doing with Pfizer, which is a medicine company, a pharmaceuticals, if they are successful and that can be rolled out as soon as possible, we could see fans back into stadiums before the end of the year. But I would say most likely we're back to more normality when it comes to sport next year. This time next year, I think we would be allowed back in. But there are some saying it could be 2, 3, 4 years before we have full normality. I can't see it being that long. But I think this is where sport has to change its model, because in reality, they're going to be heavily reliant on the media audience, the TV and the online audience. But then with people's incomes being destroyed in the last 6 weeks, they cannot sustain the prices they are asking and the fees they are asking people to pay. It is an unsustainable. It's unsustainable economically. It just cannot stay that way. So I would say fans back in the grounds. It could be anywhere. They could start easing restrictions by the end of summer. It could be July, August. They go, yeah, right, we can have public gatherings again. It could be September, October, November. I would say it's how long's a piece of string. From what I'm hearing and reading and watching on the news and the media reports, if this trial is successful and this app that the government are trialing in the Isle of Wight over the next week or so, if that is successful, then it can be a lot quicker than currently. We could suddenly see the economy open up, public spaces open up. But again, how long's a piece of string? It's all hypothetical at the moment, but I would think sometime in the autumn, but maybe a bit sooner, maybe a bit later. But again, it's all hypothetical. There's a lot that could happen within the next 3 months, 4 months. It all depends on this virus tracking app that the government in the UK at least are trialing on the Isle of Wight for the next couple of weeks. Then they're going to try and roll it out across the country. And this vaccine they're coming up with Pfizer and Oxford University. If these two things are successful, then we can go back to normal. I would have thought we can go back to some normality. I think we might have to wear face masks in public and on public transport, and in public gatherings like football stadiums. But I think we can get back to some kind of normality. However, there's a lot of hypotheticals in there. That's where I'm going to leave that. There's a lot of hypotheticals. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of what ifs. But we have to see what happens. But the vaccine trials have already started. And if they show positive signs, we could have a vaccine before the end of the year. And I'm a key worker, so I would probably get it first before non-key workers. But I could be a human guinea pig in the next 6 months. That's basically what I've been told by my work, and basically what's been hinted at is key workers will be the ones vaccinated first. And a lot of the volunteers are key workers as well who work in the care sector. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And then it's hypothetical. It generally is hypothetical. There is no certainty at this time, but we are seeing more and more signs that we could have some sport played by August. But if you go by the French league, the Dutch league, the Belgian league, we may not see sport played. So again, all hypothetical. I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. Place all your thoughts below and check out the other videos. And yeah, I'll have some more videos for you very soon. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some more breaking sports news within the next few hours that we can discuss. And there's going to be a lot of sports stories breaking over the next few days, I have no doubt. We have to look at the German Bundesliga when they restart. They push back their start date, and if they can restart in the middle of May. And the Champions League and Europa League, what happens there if we can't restart the domestic leagues? Because half the domestic leagues in Europe seem to be shutting down, and the other half are waiting on the German situation. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward. But now, thank you very much for watching. I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.